I had just moved into my dream property, 3 acres of peaceful, wooded land on the edge of town. No HOA, no nosy neighbors, and most importantly, no ridiculous community rules. For someone like me who grew up surrounded by noise and rules, this place was heaven. I'd spent years saving up for it, and when I finally got the keys, I stood on the porch, took a deep breath of the fresh pine air, and smiled. Freedom. Or so I thought. The first week was bliss. I set up my lawn chair, sipped coffee in the mornings with deer wandering nearby, and even started building a small greenhouse in the backyard. But then, on the 7th morning, peace shattered. A sharp knock on the door pulled me from my kitchen. I opened it to find a woman standing stiffly, arms crossed, dressed like she was about to host a neighborhood meeting. Platinum blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard. She didn't introduce herself with a smile, she introduced herself with a list of violations. "You're in violation of multiple HOA guidelines," she said bluntly, flipping through her clipboard as if she were handing out tickets. "Mailbox not regulation approved. Gravel driveway not permitted. Unauthorized construction activity noted in the rear yard." I stared at her, confused and a little amused. "Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA. This land isn't in your neighborhood." She pursed her lips and pointed to the small sign across the road, the stone marker for Willow Creek Estates. This entire area was part of the original development. "You're technically in violation." "Technically, I'm not," I said, calmly. "This property was legally detached from the HOA 15 years ago. It's private land now. That should have been the end of it." But she didn't leave. She stood there, staring at me like I'd just spray-painted her house. "We'll see about that," she snapped, and stormed off down my driveway. Later that day, I talked to my neighbors across the road who'd been dealing with her for years. "That's Karen," they said with a knowing look. "Head of the HOA. She thinks she owns the whole block. You're just her next project." I laughed it off, assuming she was just bluffing. What could she possibly do? 3 days later, I found out. A man in a suit rang my doorbell with legal papers in hand. I was being sued. The plaintiff? Karen Thompson, acting on behalf of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. The complaint accused me of multiple HOA violations, failure to pay community dues, and illegal usage of HOA-managed easement property. I sat down on my porch bench, flipped through the paperwork, and laughed out loud. She was actually serious. But that laugh quickly faded when I read the words civil damages and court hearing. She wanted $3,200 in fines. She also wanted me to remove my greenhouse, repaint my mailbox, and start paying monthly HOA dues. That was her real goal, not enforcement, but control. I wasn't going to roll over. I called my cousin Mark that night. He's a real estate attorney and has handled more HOA disputes than anyone I know. I sent him copies of the lawsuit, my property deed, and zoning records. His response? "Oh, she messed up. Big time." He explained that Karen's entire case rested on whether my land was still under HOA authority. And according to the county clerk's office, it wasn't. Not since 2009. The previous owner filed all the right paperwork, the HOA agreed at the time, and everything was notarized and recorded. Karen's so-called revival of jurisdiction had no legal standing. "We'll bury this in court," Mark said. Fast. But Karen wasn't just legally mistaken, she was historically persistent. Turns out, she'd done this before. 2 other families near the edge of the HOA line had been pressured by her into paying dues they didn't owe. They didn't have the stomach for legal battles, so they folded. She counted on intimidation working again. Not this time. We got to work building a defense. Mark crafted a motion to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice, meaning Karen couldn't bring it back again. He also filed a countersuit requesting she pay for my legal expenses, citing malicious prosecution and civil harassment. While we prepared, Karen doubled down. She walked by my driveway every morning, taking pictures of my construction. She left flyers in my mailbox with HOA reminders, and even tried to stop a delivery truck at the entrance of my drive, telling the driver he needed community permission to pass. My patience wore thinner each day. But I didn't react. I didn't yell or confront her. I knew something she didn't. I had already won. She just didn't know it yet. Mark sent me a text the night before the hearing. "We've got this. Just keep calm and let the paperwork do the talking." The morning of the hearing, I wore jeans and a flannel. Karen arrived in full corporate mode, carrying a binder with tabs and charts. She smirked at me from across the room, like she still believed she was in control. Her face was already rehearsing her victory speech. But what happened in that courtroom would wipe that smirk off for good. The courtroom was quiet, almost too quiet, when Karen walked in like she owned the place. She was dressed like she was about to attend a board meeting, navy blue blazer, matching heels, and a binder so thick it looked like it contained the secrets of the universe. She gave me a smug little smile as if I was already beaten. But I wasn't worried. My cousin Mark was seated beside me, calm and composed in his gray suit, tapping the file folder on the desk like he'd done this dance 100 times. Because he had. The judge, a middle-aged man with silver hair and a no-nonsense face, entered and took his seat. "Let's proceed," he said. Karen was called first. She stood up, cleared her throat, and began what I can only describe as a dramatic performance. "Your Honor, the defendant has blatantly ignored our HOA's guidelines. He is constructing illegal structures, refuses to pay dues, and has accessed HOA easement roads without authorization. This is unacceptable behavior and must be corrected." She flipped open her binder and began laying out maps, printouts of my property, photos she'd taken from the street, and a weirdly detailed list of everything she didn't like, from the color of my mailbox to the weeds in my front ditch. The judge nodded politely but didn't say much. Then he looked over at Mark. "Your response?" Mark stood up, his voice cool and confident. "Your Honor, let's get straight to the point. My client does not, and has never, lived within the jurisdiction of Willow Creek Estates HOA. Here is the deed to his property, which includes a full exemption from the HOA's authority, dated and recorded in 2009. He handed the judge a copy. He didn't stop there. "Next, here is the county zoning map which clearly shows my client's land is not part of Willow Creek Estates. This document is certified by the county clerk's office. And finally, we have a notarized letter from the previous owner confirming the HOA opt-out agreement was legally processed and accepted at the time." The judge took a moment to read through the documents. His expression was unreadable, but I noticed Karen starting to fidget in her seat. That smug look? Gone. "Ms. Thompson," the judge said, looking back at her. "Did you review any of these public records before initiating this lawsuit?" Karen stammered. I believe the HOA boundaries included that parcel. It's always been part of the community, at least informally." The judge raised his eyebrows. "Informally is not the same as legally, ma'am." Karen opened her mouth again, trying to save herself. "But the driveway connects to our road. That makes it part of our maintained infrastructure." Mark was ready. "That road, Your Honor, is a public access easement maintained by the county, not the HOA. We've already confirmed it with the Transportation Department. The HOA doesn't own it, fund it, or regulate it." Karen went silent. The judge leaned back in his chair and sighed. "All right. This court finds that the defendant's property is not under the jurisdiction of the HOA. The HOA has no standing to enforce rules, collect dues, or demand compliance in any form. This case is dismissed, with prejudice." I almost laughed out loud when I saw Karen's eyes widen. But it wasn't over yet. The judge looked at Mark. "You filed a motion for court costs?" "Yes, Your Honor," Mark replied smoothly. "Given the baseless nature of the complaint and the harassment my client has endured, including threats, unsolicited notices, and attempted interference with his delivery services, we are requesting reimbursement of legal fees and a cease and desist order." Karen suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous. He's lying." The judge raised a hand and said flatly, "Ma'am, sit down. You've wasted this court's time." And just like that, the gavel came down. I turned to Mark. He leaned over and whispered, 3 minutes. That's all it took. Outside the courtroom, Karen tried to save face by pulling out her phone and loudly calling her HOA board. "We're going to appeal. He's not getting away with this." But even she knew she was finished. There was no higher court that was going to undo a perfectly clean land deed and years of recorded zoning laws. What happened next would make sure she never tried this stunt again. 2 days after the courtroom victory, I was finally enjoying some peace again. I planted new shrubs along the driveway and even finished laying the foundation for my greenhouse. For the first time since moving in, I felt like I could breathe without someone watching me from across the road. But that didn't last long. On the 3rd morning after the case was dismissed, I opened my mailbox and found a neatly folded letter, no postage, no envelope. Just a single typed sheet of paper. It was from the Willow Creek HOA, signed by none other than Karen Thompson. Final warning, it read in bold letters. It went on to list pending non-compliance concerns, including my gravel driveway, the greenhouse construction, and the inappropriate mailbox color. The letter claimed that if I didn't bring my property into compliance within 7 days, the HOA would escalate the matter to the next level. Next level? That phrase stuck with me. It wasn't just passive aggression, it was a threat. She was trying to intimidate me again, even after a judge had told her she had no jurisdiction. And this time, she wasn't doing it through the court. She was going rogue. I took a photo of the letter and sent it straight to Mark. His reply came within minutes. "Send this to the judge's clerk immediately. She's walking a very fine legal line." And that's exactly what I did. 2 days later, I got a call, not from Karen, but from a clerk at the county courthouse. The judge had personally reviewed the letter and wasn't happy. It turns out that filing a dismissed lawsuit and then continuing to act as if the court never ruled can be seen as an abuse of civil process. And when that's combined with written threats, it crosses into harassment. So the court took action, this time against her. Karen was served again. But this wasn't from me. It was a cease and desist order from the county, instructing her to immediately stop all communication and harassment directed at me. If she violated the order, she would face criminal charges for intimidation and legal retaliation. That evening, I got a message from my neighbor across the road. "Dude, Karen's losing it. She just called an emergency HOA meeting." I didn't even care to know what was going on in her camp. My battle was over. I'd won. Legally, officially, permanently. But the fallout was glorious. Apparently, several other homeowners had been keeping quiet about similar harassment from Karen. After my case went public in the neighborhood, they came forward too. At least 2 families near the HOA border hired attorneys and started their own challenges. Others demanded an audit of HOA finances and voting procedures. The board cracked open. Karen was soon forced to resign as HOA president. The following week, a new flyer appeared in the mailboxes, this one from the new acting HOA board. It apologized for any overreach by previous leadership and confirmed that the HOA would no longer attempt to regulate properties outside its legal boundary. No signature from Karen. No smug demands. Just a quiet surrender. My land was safe. My peace was back. And my mailbox? Still the same, non-compliant, green it had always been. Mark stopped by for a visit not long after. We grilled burgers in the backyard and laughed about the whole thing. He looked out toward the HOA line across the road and chuckled. She really tried to take over land that didn't belong to her, he said, shaking his head. I nodded. She picked the wrong guy this time. Correction, he said. She picked the wrong attorney. We clinked our drinks and watched the sun set over the trees. No more lawsuits. No more clipboard check-ins. Just peace. Karen learned the hard way. If you come after someone outside your jurisdiction, you better know the law, because some of us do. A few weeks passed, and things finally felt normal again. No more mystery letters, no HOA flyers stuffed in my mailbox, and best of all, no Karen. It was like the storm had passed, and the sun was finally shining. One afternoon, I was sitting on my porch drinking sweet tea when a county truck rolled up. A uniformed officer stepped out, clipboard in hand, but unlike Karen, he had a smile. Afternoon, sir, he said. Just here to verify some follow-up regarding a civil harassment report. Turns out, after Karen received the cease and desist, she filed a complaint against me with the county, claiming I was the one harassing her. I nearly choked on my tea. Seriously? I asked. You can't make this stuff up. The officer chuckled and shook his head. Don't worry. I've already read the court documents. This is just procedural. We got the judge's ruling. You're in the clear. Just needed to close the loop. He looked around the property, nodded at my mailbox, and added, nice green. Don't change it. We both laughed. It was that moment I realized just how far Karen had tried to push things. She had sued me for not living under her HOA. Then, after getting legally shut down, she tried to twist the narrative and play the victim. But the law was on my side, and so were the facts. After that day, she vanished completely. Word around town was she sold her home and left Willow Creek Estates altogether. Whether it was shame, pressure from the board, or just the loss of control, no one knew. But no one missed her either. As for me, I expanded my greenhouse, painted a mural on the side of my shed, and installed solar panels, none of which required HOA approval. Life on my land was mine to live, and no clipboard crusader could tell me otherwise. Sometimes neighbors would pass by and wave, occasionally asking, "Hey, aren't you the guy Karen tried to sue?" I'd grin and say, "Yeah," and I buried her case in 3 minutes. That line stuck. It became kind of a legend in the neighborhood. People started using it jokingly whenever someone complained about HOA rules. Careful, or you'll end up like Karen. Even Mark got in on it. He had a custom mug made that read, 3 minutes to justice. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. Not from the HOA, but from one of the other homeowners who had once given in to Karen's intimidation. She wrote to thank me for standing my ground, for not letting her get away with it again. You didn't just win for yourself, she said. You helped all of us. That hit me harder than I expected. This had started as a simple property dispute, but it ended with a small community reclaiming its voice from a power-hungry bully. And all it took was one well-prepared legal defense, one unshakable line in the sand, and 3 minutes in court to expose the truth. Karen thought she could drag me under her HOA umbrella and control my life like she did with others. But what she didn't count on was me fighting back, with the law, with facts, and with the one thing she never had on her side, the truth. She sued me for living outside her HOA. 3 minutes later, she wished she hadn't.